I told you last time that buying a home in Italy is easy, but that's not the experience of many other people. There's a Facebook group called Renovating Italy, and believe me, not everyone has the good fortune that we had in buying a home in Italy. I've read some absolute horror stories about Italian sellers, builders, and engineers who've taken advantage of unwitting foreigners, like me, and cheated them out of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of euros. Therefore, by saying that we trusted the people involved in our purchase, I'm not saying to imitate us. My podcasts are not meant to be a how to guide of how to purchase a home or remodel a home in Italy. I just intend to tell you about our experiences. By the way, I'm Paul Spadoni. My wife Lucy and I bought a home in Tuscany in 2015, and I started this YouTube channel to talk about our experiences and about my observations of Italian culture. Now, I said the last time that we had few problems, but a big reason for that is some groundwork we had laid in previous years. First, I'd obtained my citizenship Iure Sanguinis about 10 years ago, prior to our home purchase. How I did that is a long story that I can talk about some other time, but suffice it to say that it made the transaction a little bit easier. I had also obtained my codice fiscale, the Italian equivalent of a social security number. And finally, I had established a good relationship with some of my cousins in the area, and one of them, Elena, hooked us up with Angelica, who proved to be a true godsend. Angelica is a German-born woman who had married an Italian, and she works in property management. She was very savvy and had some important contacts, most notably a geometra who also proved to be very competent. We did have one minor bump along the way, and today I'd like to talk about that. We hired a notaio who was recommended by a different relative, not Elena. This relative said we would save money by hiring this notaio to file the paperwork for our purchase. And I think we probably did save money. I have no complaints about what he charged us. It's just that he was kind of a strange character. I'd say he was lacking in social skills. He wasn't exactly rude, but he made no attempt to make us feel comfortable. There were no smiles or small talk, and little eye contact. He just looked at our documents and turned to his calculator. After about 5 minutes, he told us what it would cost to transfer the ownership into our name, with all government fees included. And his fee? Well, that was included, he said, although it could change depending on how many meetings were required. I had to ask him how much the total was for his fee, and it came out to be somewhere less than 1,000 euro. We weren't given any breakdown in writing, though, but the total seemed reasonable, so we told him to go ahead and arrange the transaction. That was in the spring, and we had to go back to the States for the summer to work, so we authorized Angelica to act on our behalf during the summer. She had to meet with the notaio and the four sellers, who consisted of four siblings who had inherited the house. Angelica brought four checks to make partial payment for the house. The home was owned equally by the four siblings, so she had four checks were needed. But Angelica didn't bring a fifth check to pay the notaio, so he canceled the meeting, and everyone had to go home. She told him that she would bring the check the next day, but he wouldn't accept that. So they all had to hold an entirely new meeting. Really, did he think Angelica would bring in check for 76,000 euros and then somehow try to stiff him for his payment? But no, he said they all had to come back in a week. We came back to Italy in the fall for the final meeting, and we had a 3 p.m. appointment with all four sellers, our geometra, the seller's geometra, Angelica, the real estate agent, and the notaio. And the notaio made us all wait an hour. We did use that time to get to know the sellers, which was a good use of our time. When the notaio finally came into the meeting room, he greeted no one. He made no announcements or apologies for his tardiness. Then he spent the next 10 minutes silently looking at his computer and his file folders and reading various documents while the rest of us continued to converse, a bit awkwardly. Then, without any preliminary words, he began reading the act of sale out loud, very quickly. I had heard that Italian law required that the document be read out loud, so I wasn't surprised by that. But I had expected a little more formality and some explanation of what was taking place. A couple of times during the recitation, he had brief discussions with our geometra and the seller's geometra, and he made a few notes on the papers and changed the wording on his computer. It took about 20 minutes to read the act, and then he got up and left the room without a word. He returned promptly, though, with a freshly printed copy of the document, which we were then given to sign. Another strange moment came when it was time to pay. Angelica and I went into the notaio's office. He took out his calculator, pushed some buttons, and showed me the figure, 2,600 euro. I wrote out a check, and we went back to the conference room. I realized as I sat down that I had received no invoice of any kind or any kind of itemization breaking out the fees and taxes, nor had Angelica received anything when she paid in July. It seems incongruous that in a country where the shopkeepers insist on giving a receipt for a gelato that costs 2 euros, that my notaio offered no proof of payment besides my canceled check. After everyone finished signing the atto di compravendita, the notaio announced that we were done. I had expected to sign many more documents, as is common in the United States, but that was it, just one document to sign. But wait, I still had the checks for the sellers, and they still had the keys for the house. Apparently, that exchange wasn't part of the notaio's responsibilities. So I just reached across the table and handed each seller his check. And one of them gave us a bag with 3 sets of keys. In retrospect, we probably should have hired the notaio that Angelica had recommended. She manages properties, and her recommended geometra, plumber, and accountant were all excellent. Probably a more conventional notaio would have cost more, but we haven't had any negative consequences from our experience. Still, I don't think I would recommend him to others. Really, it was largely because of Angelica's experience and competence that we had few worries. So if you want to buy a home and you don't have a person like Angelica, you should try to find one, whether it's a lawyer or just a trusted real estate agent. In the coming days, I'll be making many more posts about our experiences in Italy, so I'd recommend you like and subscribe to my channel. Also, please let me know if there are questions you have or topics you'd like me to cover by making a comment below. Va bene, a presto ragazzi, ci vediamo alla prossima.